Thank you very much for inviting me today. I really appreciate that. And I started, I think, in real estate in about 2007, and I think that's probably when the market was really starting to see some changes. I met my partner Nick Allerud at a networking event. He's a licensed broker in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And between Nick and I together, since that time, Nick started in 2004, I was in 2007. Combined, we worked on over 100 transactions. We've gotten approvals on every short sale. We have lost one to foreclosure. I need to be honest about that. And it wasn't because we didn't get an approval on that short sale. It was because the buyers couldn't perform at that point. The buyers couldn't get their financing, and no matter what we struggled with to get the bank to extend the time, they wouldn't extend it. So it is always a struggle, but we have very good success with our short sales because we have sort of a very systematic approach when a short sale comes in. I think some of the things that I hear from agents when we're talking to agents is one of the biggest concerns they have is the communication when you outsource to a third party. I've heard from a lot of people that sale will be outsourced and they have no idea what's going on with the file, so that doesn't help them with the homeowner. The homeowner may call them and say, hey, what's happening, and the agent doesn't know, and they try to get information from the third party, and I completely understand that. When I started with Nick, one of our things too is we felt the same way. We'd work with lawyers, we'd work with other third party title companies, other people that could negotiate, and what would happen is we were in the same boat too, is we were learning that the communication is one of the key pieces, and it's not just for the list agent, it could be for the buyer's agent as well. So we have, what we implemented was a tracking system through software that every time there's movement on our files that a notice gets generated via email to the agent, to the homeowner. And I would call that like a first tier of information. That's your detailed information, whether or not the file was submitted. The bank now is requiring bank statements, pay stubs, if they need updates, if they're looking for other information. That automatically gets tracked and sent to the list agent and to the homeowner. Obviously, this process starts to happen once the property goes under contract. There's really not a whole lot that we could do with the software until it's submitted to the bank. But what we will do for the agent, or what we do in conjunction with the agent, is we collect all the paperwork from the homeowner. So realistically, all the agent has to do is call and say, here's the phone number to the client. We're actually hired by the homeowners, not through the agent. We're not employed by the agent. We work parallel to them. We work in conjunction with them. And then we speak to the homeowner. It's really important that the homeowner has full disclosure of what's about to happen. They need to know the risks of the short sale. They need to know that their credit is not going to stay intact if they're missing their payments, and that's really the #1 reason that their credit will start to take a nosedive. It's not because they're short selling or necessarily foreclosing, but it's because they're missing payments. You know, if you miss 2 payments versus 36 payments, we were working on one in Derry, and the homeowner's behind 36 payments. I mean, that's a lot. So those are harder short sales to do. When you have somebody 3 years behind, then it becomes very hard. But when you have somebody 2 or 3 payments behind it, you have a much higher success rate. So what we would do is they would call us and say, here's the homeowner that needs a short sale, I want to list the property. We would discuss the options with that homeowner and who's the lien holder on the property. We send them that information, that packet out, disclosures, whatever they have to fill out. That information comes directly back to us, so the agent doesn't have to do that. If they want to do that, that's up to them as well. It depends on how comfortable the agent is too in the process. You know, you work with some agents and it's very hard. They don't really want to outsource their short sales, and I don't think anybody should have to if they don't want to. But if somebody's tired of that paperwork, and we get the range of people that we work with, somebody that's done it for years and is just sick of it and says, you know what, you got to take this over, I'm too busy selling or listing or helping people buy, or you have the brand new agent that's never done one and says, I need help. So there's really a range of what we see. Once that packet comes into our office, we call our title company, but they run our title checks for us so that we know, is there another lien on this property? Is there something that we missed and should go on the HUD? Many times the lender will pay out that third lien, or if there's a credit card lien, and we know that at that point there's something else there we have to negotiate. We try to get that information up front. That way there's no surprises, I guess, when the approval comes in and we're getting ready to close. We also try to have open communication with the listing agent so that if there's issues with the property, we can try to, I guess we try to overestimate on the HUD. We try to overcompensate for what the lender will have to pay out of pocket. We know that information up front. Sometimes we can get the lender to cover those fees so that the agents don't have to pay for it, or the buyer or the homeowner. I think as long as everybody's on the same page, then there's usually not an issue. And then getting back to the communication piece, once all this information is now inputted into our system, we also have like a second tier of communication to the buyer agent. They don't get a detailed report of really what's happening with the file, but they will get something that says, okay, the file has now been submitted to the lender, awaiting assignment for a negotiator. So those are things that they'll get because they're really not privy to the important information. But it's important in our minds that the buyer's agent be aware of the process just as much as the listing agent, because you want to hold on to that buyer. You know, if you have an average sale from the time that you submit your contract to the time you close of about 3 months, you want to keep that buyer invested in that property. So I think that's just a general overview of how we approach things right now on these files. We charge our fees to the buyers. That is disclosed in the MLS right up front, so that the buyers know before they even step foot on the property that there's a fee involved that they have to pay. The seller doesn't have excess money most of the time. Sometimes the sellers have money. So what we had done was we had so what had happened was buyers were now in charge of paying for those fees. They would pay the smoke certificates. They would pay the Title V. They would pay excess fees. Again, it's all about having that disclosed up front. When an REO goes on the market, those fees are traditionally charged to the buyer. So now the short sale fee, too, can be charged to the buyer. So our fee, because of that, we're able to try to preserve for the listing agent the most commission possible. There are other firms out there, they charge a commission point to the list agent, and that's fine too. It's just not how we're structured. And then historically, I know that some of the lawyers and some of the other third-party firms were able to get a fee from the lender at closing. And that's about 50% of the time you could do that right now, maybe. I know that Fannie Mae has specific guidelines that you can get paid by the lender at closing. But because it's a gamble, you don't know if they're going to pay. And again, our whole thing is we want everything smooth from beginning to end. We set up our company that the fees automatically, they are charged to the buyer. They know up front. You know, the buyer doesn't have to go see the property if they don't want to. It's really on them if they do want to see that property. And so those are the things that we do overall that ensure the success of the sale.